For me, it's Winterreise is really one of Schubert's greatest masterpieces, and I've always wanted to play this. So I'm so happy to have the opportunity to play Winterreise with Mark, who is my favorite singer.
I think a good way to explain Winterreise is to talk about three different elements that Schubert uses in the writing. One is that he uses repeated notes a great deal. So we hear this constant repetition of the same note. It's like really describing how the journey will be. It's what we use the word in English, inexorable, that he set out on this journey, and it's like the journey through life. You will be taken right to the end of your journey without really being able to deviate at all. And Schubert does this in a wonderful way with this repeated note that goes all the way through, even in the song Der Wegweiser, where the voice stops singing melody and really just gets on to one single tone. Another wonderful element that he uses is the change between major and minor. So even in the first song, you start off in the minor key, and then the last verse is in the major key, and you have this as a constant thing that goes through the cycle. You have this variation, and it's like the temperature changing between verses in some of these songs. And the other element that I think, musical element that Schubert uses most wonderfully in Winterreise is this open fifth, the most bare of all musical intervals. And it's like stripping away everything that's emotional, and it just becomes something essential about looking at life and looking at man's condition in life. So you get these wonderful means that Schubert uses to make this piece so powerful.
Well, of course, the obvious thing is that there is a singer to play along with, and for me it's wonderful to cooperate. And but I think what's so amazing about Winterreise is this very dark and serious mood that's set up at the beginning, and it goes through all the cycle. It's not like Schöne Müllerin, which starts quite happily, and then there is a story, and it really has a tragic end. But in Winterreise, it's more a kind of a condition, and it's a very long cycle. So I think also for the audience, it's a wonderful experience to listen to this music.
I think one of the interesting things for me is that Schubert lived such a short life. He only lived to the age of 31, and yet you understand in some ways that he had a late period. There's the last three piano sonatas, the E-flat piano trio. There are these various pieces that feel very much like last statements, or somehow of he's complete master of his material, but he wants to make something, he's saying something very important. And I think Winterreise definitely is in this period. You can really locate it. Some of his musical ideas have reached a wonderful maturity, and I think it's true. You could say that there are these 5 or 6 pieces which are absolutely unsurpassable. think with Winterreise, there are 24 songs. It's like 24 different versions almost of description of what life is like when you look at it in a very bleak, very. It's a vision which is completely a steady look. There's no flinching. There's no sort of looking aside. Each of these songs has a very definite view, looking at life as it really is. I think Der Wegweiser is possibly a very good example of this, where he talks about the signpost, and the signpost is showing you the direction which you must take, and that no man can come back from. This is obviously towards death, but it's done with this incredible sense of just having to carry on. It's as I say, there's not sentimental. There's not a sense that in which one is trying to take any false comfort. It's absolutely wanting to look at it with complete objectivity.
I have many favorite songs in Winterreise. I cannot choose one.
Masters in the past.
I think what's interesting is that most people come to learn Winterreise, come to hear Winterreise with baritone and even bass singers. So the famous recordings by Fischer Dieskau, but also Hans Hotter, a very famous recording. But all of these are transposed versions, and some of them really take the cycle into very low registers, particularly for the piano. Schubert wrote it originally for really a tenor voice, or certainly a very high baritone, but really it's in tenor keys. And in the manuscript, even some of the keys are higher than in the first published version. And in the manuscript, it's very much written as for a tenor. I think one of the points about it is it's not an old man singing this music. There's the song Der Kaiser Kopf, where he talks about his hair having gone white. But it only goes white because he's in the snow. He's outside in this weather, and then the snow melts and his hair becomes black again. So it's really he is a young man. He's complaining about how far death is away, that he has to keep going on this journey. So I think actually to hear it in these original keys for a tenor is very interesting for an audience, and I really think it's very true to the spirit in which it was written.
I agree. From a pianist's point of view, it makes sense to play the original keys. I love listening to Winterreise with baritone or bass, but some of the piano writing is easier to realize in the original keys, simply because it's a little bit higher, and it's even more important, I think, in Schöne Müllerin, because in Schöne Müllerin you have all these atmospheric piano playing, with the little river, and it just, for me, it works better in the original keys. If it's a third or even more lower, then for me it's very hard to play on the piano.
I think also Schubert is very conscious of which keys he's writing in. So it does make a difference if he's writing in B minor. It has a particular feel for him, and I think that's something that he makes a definite point about. Die Schöne Müllerin, for example, essentially you start off in B flat, and the end of the journey is in E major, which are two keys which are as far away as possible. I think this is a very deliberate thing for Schubert, and when you start transposing the songs as baritones do, they don't always transpose them consistently. So they take. It's not only that the keys are different, but also the relationship between the songs can be changed. And I think that's a shame, because I really believe that Schubert thought very carefully about what he was doing when he was writing these keys in the original. No, I think I try to be as unneurotic as possible. I think as a singer, it's a bit of a mystery as to how voices work, and I think the worst thing you can do is to think you have to have steam and you have to have special diet and special sleep and everything, because then if anything goes wrong, then you think you really can't sing. So I like to live as normally as possible. I like to have a beer after a concert. I enjoy my life, because in the end it's also about what you have to say, as much as how you say it. So I try to really want to communicate something, and that I can do even when I'm perhaps not feeling 100% vocally. You know, it's more than just about voice.
Eine Straße muss ich gehen, eine Straße.
Well, I feel very lucky that I have lots of different areas of interest. I still will sing lots of Bach, Bach Passions in particular. So I have oratorio. I do a lot of Lieder. I do a lot of contemporary music now. A lot of composers are writing music for me, and I do some opera. I did Billy Budd recently at Benjamin Britten. I'll do a new piece by George Benjamin at the Royal Opera House, Covent Garden, and so I have lots of different things. In the Lieder, it's always great to look again at these masterpieces. Till we've explored quite a lot of the song cycles, but there are many more songs we need to look at, and I mean, Schubert wrote 600 songs, so there's a lifetime of work, even just with this one composer.
Yes, my next really important or big project is also Schubert. From next year on, I will play 4 recital programs dedicated to all the great Schubert solo piano works. So let's say from the last 6 or 7 years of his life, basically all his important piano works.